Roger Stone, great to see you again. Congratulations on the big news.
Thank you. It was an extraordinary ordeal to have the full weight of the federal government with their very deep pockets, particularly in this case where the prosecutors, in my view, were not honest. I think they were politically motivated. And I had, from my point of view, a biased judge and a stacked jury. And as you know, substantial juror misconduct. But beyond that, despite the legal precedent in every circuit in the United States, including DC, despite the official policy of the Department of Justice and the Bureau of Prisons that mandates that those convicted of nonviolent crimes be moved from incarceration to home confinement, despite my age at 67 and my health, where I've had a history of respiratory problems, including asthma. I almost died of it as an infant. The judge insisted in sending me to a prison where she said there were no known cases of COVID-19, but where their official website now shows that there are 60. And next week it'll be more, I suspect. So I viewed this as a death sentence. I really viewed it as the end of the road. I could have been sent to home confinement like Michael Avenatti or Michael Cohen until he violated probation, which was idiotic, or Rick Gates, but the judge seemed intent to send me. And then the DC Circuit Court upheld her decision, which we scratch our heads about 20 minutes before President Trump announced that he had commuted my entire sentence. So I just didn't avoid, the penalty here. I avoided what I think was almost certain death in a squalid prison in rural Georgia. But I must tell you, David, that I was never worried. I was never scared. I was concerned about my family, obviously, but I was never scared and I was never worried. I was completely confident that the Lord would guide the president to do the right thing. As I told you the last time we got together, that back in January, when I really hit rock bottom, I mean, my life was in turmoil. I was angry that I wasn't going to get a fair trial, and that I was gagged, that I was not able to defend myself in public while CNN and MSNBC and the New York Times and the Washington Post just rained disinformation on me, that I was frustrated because I didn't think I was going to get a fair process. I was angry about being politically targeted. I was worried about my family. I couldn't sleep. I started, hitting a little too much of the bottle and eating too much. It was a really stressful time. And I had occasion because of a very young, a 26-year-old, very dynamic young evangelist from North Florida, Randy Coggins, who had a relationship through friends with Reverend Franklin Graham. And Franklin Graham was in the area of the state where I live. He was in Boca Raton for a revival. And I had seen Billy Graham preach when I was 12 years old at a tent revival in Bridgeport, Connecticut. It's one of my earliest memories. I still remember it like it was yesterday because it was really spectacular. I mean, he was very dynamic. He was very magnetic. He was very charismatic. He was very tan. Every hair was in place when he started. And by the time he finished, he was a sweating, nervous wreck, and he had brought down the house. He had this crowd of Christians right in the palm of his hand, and he told it like it was. And I saw, as a 12-year-old, I saw people stand up and witness. It was an amazing thing. So I went and I met with Franklin Graham, and he was very cordial. And I kind of poured my heart out to him. And he said, "Well, why are you coming to see me?" And I said, "Well, you're a friend of the president. I thought you might put in a good word for me." He said, "Well, I'll see what I can do about that. But I think there's a larger solution here, and that is that you need to be reborn. Amen. You should reaffirm your commitment to Jesus Christ. You should ask him to come into your life. You should confess your sins. You should pledge to do your very best to sin no more." He said, "I can tell you right now, you're going to fail now and then because we're human and nobody's perfect but him. But what he wants is good faith effort. And if you pledge to do that, I'm telling you, your problems will be solved. He will not abandon you. He will protect you. He will always be with you, no matter what trouble you face." And I thought about that. And I then went to the revival where there were 2,000 people. It was just jam-packed. It was an outdoor amphitheater if you brought your own blanket or your own lawn chair. And It was, I would say the crowd was about 50% white, about a quarter African American, about a quarter Hispanic, socioeconomically, middle to lower. Could have been a Trump rally, a lot of Trump hats, a lot of Trump T-shirts. And of course, thanks to CNN, I'm now universally recognized everywhere for good and for bad. Many Christians coming up telling me they're praying for me, they love me, asking for autographs, asking for selfies, which, I never, ever, based on the advice President Nixon once gave me, I never, ever refuse. We came to the point in the program where Reverend Graham reached the crescendo and he said, I don't care what your problem is, whether it's drug abuse or alcoholism or family problems or relationship problems or financial problems or health problems. The Lord will protect you. The Lord will take you in his hand and he will lead you. He will guide you. He'll never abandon you. But you have to confess your sins. If you're prepared to confess your sins and to pledge to sin no more and to walk in his way, it will open doors for you. And at that moment, I felt the calling. I stood up with 500 other people. I wasn't the slightest bit embarrassed. I confessed that I was a sinner. I repeated a pledge that he recited, and it was if a cement block was lifted off my chest. I can't even explain it. Sure. I had this feeling of exhilaration, like it was a whole new start. And I left I had to fight my way out of the crowd because, again, I had a lot of selfie requests and wanted to pose with a lot of Christians. So many people telling me they were praying for me and my family. It was heartening. And then all the way home, Randy Coggins, who's driving me, didn't say a word. I just sat there and I thought about the whole experience. And I knew from that moment that it would all be fine. I knew from that moment that, this would reach a crescendo and that the president, who was really my only option at the end after the courts completely failed me in what I think were political decisions, this was the only option. He didn't just stand up for justice in this case, David. He saved my life. I have no doubt about that. And I don't know why I have been put into this horrific situation, because I'm not a Russian spy. There is nothing else to tell. It's funny to see Andrew Weissman, the chief number 2 man, who's really the number 1 man in the Weissman investigation, insisting that I'm hiding something. I have nothing to hide. Mm-hmm. There was nothing to hide. They wanted me to lie, to bear false witness against the president in return for some kind of leniency. They put out feelers, Stone should come clean, Stone should confess, Stone should get right. And no, I was not going to do that. For people to now come and say, oh, he covered up for the president in return for commutation, that's completely untrue. There was nothing to cover up. I know of no illegal or inappropriate actions by the president whatsoever. Mm-hmm. And they went through every email, every text message, every phone call. There is no evidence to the contrary. So they're trying to revive the whole Russian collusion thing on my back, and it's just not going to sell. And I obviously have some difficult decisions to make because I'd like to pursue my appeal. On the other hand, any trial in the District of Columbia, particularly a trial in front of the judge I had, who I would have again, is fraught with real peril. I don't know that I can get a fair trial. I didn't get one the first time. I don't know why I would get one the second time. Yeah. So I might just have to take the win, with the grace of God, walk away and go back to trying to pick up the pieces of my life. I've lost everything. Yeah. Lost my home, one of my 2 cars. We kept the oldest one and sold the newest one. Most of my insurance, my ability to make a living. My wife has medical expenses that go beyond the small insurance coverage we still have. So, it's a struggle, but I don't regret anything that I did in 2016 because I didn't break the law. And the great thing about this whole experience is that I'm back to being in the ranks of those who believe in Jesus Christ. I'm a Catholic. I'm back to the Catholic Church. I don't agree with everything, by the way, in the Catholic dogma, but it's all about the basics. Do you believe in the resurrection? Do you believe in the birth and the death and the resurrection of Jesus Christ as the Son of God? And I do, and I always have. But I had wandered, and now I'm back. One of the most frustrating things is when I filed my emergency motion, my church, St. Anthony's here in Fort Lauderdale, had just reopened from the COVID virus. I got to go to Mass once. And then I was under house arrest. I had to miss mass 2 weeks in a row, which was annoying. Also, sometimes during the week, I would drive to the church where the doors were open. It was a great place to just sit and contemplate and pray and read the Psalms or the Proverbs. And Reverend Graham had sent me a Bible in which he had annotated certain sections. And on those days when I got angry and frustrated, I would read it, it would calm me down. Martini helped as well once in a while. But, it has been a positive experience in that sense. The other sense in which it's been a positive experience is that you find out who your real friends are and are not.
Yeah.
Politics is a very phony business. There are a lot of people who are your friends when they want something or think you can do something for them, but they're not really your friends. And in this instance, I found out who my real friends were. People like Tucker Carlson, who's a great guy, very loyal, was indignant about this entire matter, just has a great sense of justice and injustice, who pounded away on his show about how unfair this was and how outrageous it was.
Yeah.
Sean Hannity, another great advocate on my behalf. Charlie Kirk was a very effective advocate on my behalf. So many people like that. I mean, the list of Bernie Kerik, the former New York police commissioner, Chris Ruddy with Newsmax, an old friend of mine, conservative publisher, Congressman Matt Gaetz, General Michael Flynn, who has his own problems, but still had time to follow my case and offer support for me. So many patriots, Reverend Darrell Scott, Reverend Mark Burns, Pastor Howard Brown, Rodney Howard Brown, pardon me. So many ministers across the country who were supportive, Rod Parsley in Ohio and so on. They feel like family to me now. They were there when I needed them. They didn't cut and run and head for the high grass when things got tough. And I will never forget that. I'll never forget the people contacted me saying, "We're doing a prayer chain for you tonight." Yeah. Or we've asked if we can do a special prayer for you this Sunday. All across the country. It was an uplifting experience for my wife and I will never forget it.
Roger, let me ask you about, the T-shirt says it all, or the shirt says it all, right? Did nothing wrong. You feel vindicated, obviously. You knew that all along. My question is a little bit more Dr. Phil-ish, which is, where do you go from here as it relates to, the documentary, right? Get Me, Roger Stone, this bravado that you've had it's not just bravado. I mean, you've lived a life, right, Roger? And so where do you have, I guess where I'm going with this is from a regret standpoint, maybe not necessarily in this case, but, looking now forward as to what you want to do with your life to maybe not make amends, it's all covered under the blood, but to be maybe do things differently. Do you see any of that at all, Roger?
Well, I think the only thing worse in my business of politics than being wrong is being boring. And I can guarantee you I don't intend to become boring. Mm-hmm. I think that, I have a personal style that is mine. If you don't like it, you can look elsewhere. But let me be clear. I have a tremendous zeal to win for my clients and the candidates and causes that I believe in. But that zeal does not take you over the line of breaking the law, and never has. Mm-hmm. I believe in doing things in a dramatic way, because in this fast-moving world, it's very hard to get the voters' attention and hold it. So I think you have to be provocative. You have to be interesting. You have to lay out ideas in a big way. But I do regret the fact that it took this long for me to return to the church, because I realized that I could have had the solitude and the solace and the strength and the fortitude to fight this much earlier. I went through a year of hell before mm-hmm. I found the way. And now I feel much better. I do feel vindicated. If you go on television today, you see my critics are still shooting at me. Adam Schiff and Rod Rosenstein, the swamp creature that created this whole illegal investigation, and Robert Mueller himself, and they're repeating the same lies. No, I'm not a Russian intelligence agent. No, I was never in touch with a Russian intelligence agent. Any communications you found with some guy on the internet were completely benign. They took place after all the WikiLeaks documents were already published and so on. Here's the big difference, David.
Yeah.
In the old days, I would have wanted revenge. I would have wanted to take revenge against every one of them. But now I realize that vengeance is God's. It's not mine. In other words, they will get their just due. They will get it from a vengeful God. The vengeance, according to Hebrews, I think it's 30:31, belongs to God. He knows who the bad guys are. I don't have to worry about it anymore because it's in his hands. There is nothing worse than being, in the eyesight of a vengeful and living God. So I no longer am obsessed with, the Sicilian concept of revenge, which generally speaking is a dish that tastes best when eaten cold. I really do believe that those who are trying to undo this president, those who are trying to destroy me, trying to destroy Michael Flynn, who's a very good man and a great American patriot, war hero, I do believe they're satanic. I do believe they don't believe. I think they believe in the New World Order. I don't know if they worship Moloch or they worship no one or they worship Satan, but they don't share our values. That's clear to me. And they cut corners. And what's outrageous is their arrogance, their moral superiority, when in fact they have no morals at all.
Just to be clear, you said satanic. Who are you referring to specifically? I'm sorry.
I don't believe the Clintons are really Christians. I don't believe that any of these people involved in my prosecution are really believers in God, whether they be Christians or whether they be Jews. I think that they are truly evil. And they make fun of our religion. They look down on it. They look down on these elites. They look down on our belief in Jesus Christ. They look down on our values. To them, we're a bunch of, I don't know, we're like toothless hillbillies. They try to treat us like we're sometimes their inferiors. But this is an epic struggle between good and evil. This is an epic struggle between the dark and the light. I really believe that. And yeah. I know Donald Trump. I've known him for 40 years. He didn't have to do this. This is costing him money. He's subject to ridicule and abuse every single day. I really believe that God put him in this place for this time for a purpose. Beyond that, I think God put me in this position at this time for a purpose. I'm very familiar with the Kim Clement prophecies in which that preacher said, he predicted accurately the election of Donald Trump. He predicted accurately the failed impeachment effort. And at the end, he says, a stone will save the president. A stone. He says, remember that name. He doesn't say, remember that thing.
Yeah.
So if God has a mission for me, he hasn't revealed it to me yet, but if he does, I'm ready for duty.
By the way,
I think there's a larger role to play here, and I imagine God will tell me what that is when he's ready.
As for the future, you would take a job with a Donald Trump in the future. I mean, whether it be president or if in the private sector, would you work for Donald again?
Look, nobody would turn down the president of the United States, but I don't expect that to happen. I really believe I can be an effective advocate on the outside as I was last time. I mean, I wrote The Clintons' War on Women. It's still a great book. It exposes the epic corruption of Bill and Hillary Clinton and Hillary and Webb Hubbell's daughter, Chelsea. It exposes the Clinton Foundation and all of that epic financial corruption. It goes all the way back to the gubernatorial days. The corruption is rife. That book will curl your hair. I ran an operation at the convention to make sure that the nomination was not stolen from Donald Trump, which has happened in our history. This is not a far-fetched thing. In 1952, Robert Taft went to Chicago with more than enough votes to be nominated on the first ballot, and a clever campaign by the Eastern Republicans snatched that nomination away from him for Dwight Eisenhower, who went on to be one of the greatest presidents in my lifetime. So, that was a completely independent operation.
Roger, yeah, go ahead. No, I was going to say, what about, have you been in touch at all with Paul Manafort? I mean, what's the deal there? How's that?
I have not, because until very recently, Paul Manafort and I have been prohibited from communications by a court order. In essence, the prosecutors give you at the time that you're charged a no contact list of people that you can have no contact whatsoever with, no phone, no email, no text. And he is on that list, as are a number of people I never heard of, and then a number of other people who I think were witnesses against me. a number of people who I may have gone to the grand jury, a number of people I know went to the grand jury. It's very rare that after a conviction that these lists are kept in place, but for whatever reason, Judge Jackson kept it in place. It was not until yesterday that was lifted. So I have not been in touch with Paul. My wife has talked to Paul's wife, but not often. And therefore I have no report on how he's doing, but I'm sure he's glad to be out of prison and at least with his family.
Let me ask you, Roger, about all of the social media platforms that you've been barred from. Is there any thought of a legal challenge here at all? I mean, the judge has pretty much kind of slammed down you on none of these platforms. Do you have any recourse there legally?
Well, we're examining it very carefully. I mean, as you know, I was banned on Twitter years ago. I had 550,000 followers when they banned me. They never gave me an explanation of why I was banned, but I had posted something that I think hurt Jake Tapper's feelings, so I got banned. I thought I would miss it, but now, in all honesty, because they have essentially, deplatformed conservatives, Christians, Republicans, independents, libertarians, Trump supporters, anybody who's not a liberal. It's not even interesting anymore. There's no repartee. It's not fun. It's just one big cesspool of hate. I mean, if I showed you the threatening emails and text messages and tweet messages members of my family have gotten, you just wouldn't believe it. You just wouldn't. And so I thought I would miss Twitter, but I don't. Now they have banned me on Facebook and Instagram based on this completely false claim that I had 100 fake Facebook profiles, which I didn't. This allegation grows out of the Mueller investigation. Somebody they interviewed made this claim. There's no evidence to support it. And then some left-wing research group out of New York produces a report which has about as much validity as the Steele dossier, in which I am the mastermind of a giant network of fake social media platforms in which I'm posting disinformation. I've never owned a Facebook profile in the name of another person or in the name of an organization that didn't legitimately, exist. I have used them to promote my books.
Right.
So we're examining the question. I'm not sure, I have lost income because I can't sell books on Facebook anymore. That's one of the ways I made my previous books bestsellers. On the other hand, they have very deep pockets and fighting them is very difficult legally. First Amendment cases against them have generally not fared well in court. There may be some business-oriented actions that I can take against them, either tortious interference or restraint of trade. I don't know. I have business lawyers looking at it. I've had defamation lawyers looking at it. I haven't made a decision. I'll tell you this. I have signed up at Parler, Parler, which is a new platform which doesn't censor anybody, Republicans, conservatives, liberals, progressives. And I find that it's great because you can say what you really think and you can be a little more out there without crossing the line and being totally vulgar. But it's a great place. I recommend it to people who want to, have the repartee and the debate that should be on social media and not being afraid of being politically incorrect. If you criticize radical Islam on Facebook or on Twitter, you're going to get blocked. That's a sad reality.
Let me ask you real quick. I know you can go in for a long time and talk about prosecutorial abuses. They run the gamut. I've read the articles or the op-eds, if you will. But is there something that you maybe even haven't disclosed, or you can at least give us a sense of something that's out there from a prosecutorial abuse standpoint that people might not be aware of that you think is important to get? You've mentioned the prosecutors and you've talked about some of what's gone on, but is there something that people should be aware of in terms of what happened to you that maybe they don't quite understand?
Well, first of all, I think you have to recognize that many of the facts regarding my case are still under a protective seal, and therefore I am not able to talk about them. But some of them are not. Just the fact that the prosecutors in the case made a motion before the court that I could not raise the misconduct of the Office of Special Counsel or the Department of Justice or the FBI or any member of Congress in my defense. Now, firstly, that's unconstitutional under a decision called Kiles v. Whitley. But if you think about it for a moment, why would the prosecution even make such a motion if there was no misconduct for me to raise? If that ruling had been in place in General Flynn's case, we'd know nothing about what they did to him. Right. So I think that's misconduct right there. There are other instances. Aaron Zielinski, who testified before the House Judiciary Committee 3 weeks ago, who interestingly enough wouldn't show up in person because he's concerned about COVID virus, but has no problem with sending me to a prison where there is COVID virus. This guy's testimony was an amusing combination of perjury, hearsay, and obfuscation. I mean, he had no direct testimony that showed there was pressure on Attorney General Barr or the acting U.S. Attorney Timothy Shea to give me special treatment. And if you will examine my entire case, the only special treatment I got was to my detriment. When 29 FBI agents storm your home at 6 o'clock in the morning to arrest you for a white-collar, nonviolent process crime, that is truly special treatment. When Comey, Clapper, Brennan, Mueller, all of these people lie to Congress with impunity, but they prosecute you, that's definitely special treatment. When they send Michael Avenatti and even Paul Manafort and Rick Gates and Michael Cohen to home confinement to protect them from COVID virus, but they insist you go to jail, once again, special treatment. So this whole nonsense that in the sentencing process, when these prosecutors souped up a recommendation of 9 years by essentially accusing me of crimes of which I had not been convicted. I'm sorry, but I didn't threaten a federal judge. I dispute that. I did not post a picture of a judge with a crosshairs over her face. I dispute that. I did not publish a book in violation of the gag order. My book came out before the gag order was in place. I dispute that. But in each one of those instances, they wanted to give me additional time in prison for crimes I hadn't been committed. And fortunately, people above them who were more responsible and recognized that the actual guidelines for the crimes that I was wrongfully committed for was 18 months. They gave me 40. So show me where I got a break. I got no break. I still maintain my innocence, and I'd like to go to appeal if it's at all realistic.
Let me ask you, Roger, but as we wrap up here, Mitt Romney, I've got to get your reaction to this. You might have heard, obviously. He goes to Twitter, and Mitt Romney says, unprecedented historic corruption. An American president commutes the sentence of a person convicted by a jury of lying to shield that very president. What's your message to Mitt Romney?
Well, Mitt should learn the facts of my case. I didn't shield anybody. I have no detrimental or negative information about the president. I know of no misconduct or illegal activity by the president. So I wasn't shielding anybody, and I didn't get a fair trial. Mitt, you're saying convicted by a jury. Well, fine. The jury was cooked. The jury was not a jury of my peers. Sadly, I think Mitt Romney is so jealous of the success of Donald Trump and his presidency and the fact that Mitt tried twice and didn't get there, that his bitterness just clouds his judgment. I know they don't like him back in Utah. I probably can't go there. Never lived there anyway. Had a nice vacation place there, but I really don't even consider him a Republican anymore. I think this is all personal animus for the president, and I wish he would study the facts in my case before he says things like that.
The last question I have for you in terms of praying for your enemies. We talked about this. That's probably one of the hardest verses in the Bible. Roger, I tell you what, you got enemies out there, and the folks that, as you say, did you dirty, if you will. They're your enemies, but the Bible commands us to pray for them. Good luck with that. I would take it. That's hard. It's hard.
It's very hard. But when I found that passage from Hebrews, it all made sense. They'll be dealt with. They will get their just deserts. A vengeful God will deal with them at the right time. I don't need to worry about it. It's not in my wheelhouse, so to speak. It speaks very specifically that those who have sinned, those who have borne false witness against others, the Lord will deal with them. So it's not like they will go unpunished. That makes it easier to pray for them for when that moment comes.
So you can have bravado going forward, the Roger Stone bravado, but there's a humbleness that's accompanying some of this, is my sense of what you're saying.
Well, look, I've already throttled it back quite a bit here. You asked me about Mitt Romney. I didn't rip his throat out. So it's the new Roger Stone. What can I say?
Roger, a pleasure. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.